Hello, TPR Nation. This is Amber Kim from the Perfect REA. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow-Up Friday, where I'll be covering the highlights and action items from this week's episodes. As most of you are aware, Surge is just around the corner, and a lot of advisors have implemented or begun to implement this October, November, and March and April Surge schedule. So on Monday, Matt and Michael wanted to take this time to make sure all of our listeners are ready for Surge. They also wanted to tackle some myths about Surge and advisors and their calendars and the intentionality behind Surge. There's still this idea that advisors need to be available whenever or wherever a client wants to meet. For Matt and Micah, when a client calls their office to schedule a meeting, the team lets them know that they're available on certain days and certain times. If the client requests a different time, they'll respond back with their availability. They aren't changing that up because the client wants it. Why? Because if you start breaking your schedule, your whole day is thrown off, as well as your team's. Now, they clarify that this isn't about treating your clients like cattle. Instead, it's about how are you gearing up to deliver the most value to clients. Micah gave an example of how when he's in that regular rhythm, he doesn't even need to look at his clock. But when a meeting happens that's at a different time and off that regular cadence, it throws his rhythm off, and he's not running the meeting efficiently or delivering as much value. So anytime you go into a meeting that you're thinking about something else, you're not delivering value. The guys stress that Surge is a foundational item of a successful practice. So one of the things you want to do is put into Calendly or whatever scheduling app you're using those set days and times, and make sure that your Surge week is blocked out on your calendar. That way, if a client tries to get a hold of you for a meeting, your team can see the only availability during Surge. Now, for new listeners, and as a reminder, Matt and Michael also wanted to cover what Surge is, which is when you're looking at all your clients to see how and what time of the year you deliver the most value, and seeing all of your clients during that specified period of time. For the guys, this is spring and fall, so they set up a Surge schedule which is based on how many meetings they can do a day and stay in a highly productive zone. They recommend doing 1-hour meetings for each client because around that 45-minute mark, people start to get glassy-eyed, and doing at least 4 meetings a day. They said anything less and you're just playing office. They said this is about being intentional and thinking about what are you solving for. Matt and Micah then went into how do you communicate transitioning to Surge to your clients. They said the first thing you need to do is stop giving out your cell phone number. And then the next thing is all about client communication. You need to explain to them what your communication policy is. The guys have 3 levels: a 911 emergency where the guys will get back that day or the next. A non-emergency is one where they can schedule within a few days or the following week for a phone call. And then the third is an email letting them know they'll respond in a couple of days. Micah recommends explaining to existing clients that they're creating a new system in place where they can focus on the client's questions first, and then we'll outline the new communication policy. They said clients typically have a positive response to this because it's being framed in a positive way for them. The guys said a large part of a successful Surge is based on your team as well. You want to go through and explain why you're doing Surge, how it benefits the client and the team. And then with your calendar, make sure you're setting up rules. Automate this as much as you can and put your predetermined slots in there. The guys will also send a video, and members, you can see this example within the member site. That video will explain the next meeting and what they'll be talking about and how to schedule. That delivers value to the client and it sets the team up for success. Also, by setting up these rules, you're protecting both yours and your team's time. Surge isn't just set up so you can take large vacations. It allows you and your team to be hyper-focused on the value you can deliver to clients during that time. And then outside of Surge, it allows you and your team to work on other projects. Another thing that comes up related to Surge is getting prepared for all the meetings. Micah's pro tip is that you prepare for the next meeting after your last one. Make sure you're noting what tasks need to take place and what things are going to be discussed and your thoughts for that next meeting immediately following that current meeting. Doing this is all about systematizing and streamlining. Let's get into action items. Block out Wednesday, October 18th for our next Nation Power Session. Visit theperfectra.com/power session to get signed up. If you're interested in analyzing your practice to see what area you need to focus on to improve, visit theperfectra.com/quiz. And do what the guys say. What they share at The Perfect RA is about doing what works. So listen from those who've done the work and know what it takes to deliver massive value and improve your life, your clients' lives, and your team's lives. On Wednesday, Matt was joined by Charlie Walker, who's an explorer, writer, and speaker from the UK, and who will also be a speaker at the CISI conference next month with Matt. Charlie shared his background, which includes various expeditions from walking, cycling, kayaking, and his goal of accessing remote places where he can learn about other people's lives. Charlie said he grew up in a small village and was always very curious. Once he started traveling, he found that he was fascinated by those places that were off the beaten track. He had an ambition to be a travel writer, and he decided to start as big of a challenge that he could, which was to cycle from Britain and back to Britain via the furthest point in Europe, Asia, and Africa. This took him 4.5 years and a distance the equivalent of twice the circumference of the Earth. He said to do what he did, you just have to start. That there's so many different things you can do to prepare, but it's easy to get bogged down with all the things that could happen, and then you'll never start. He shared a Norwegian phrase of the doorstep mile, which is a psychological threshold and just getting your wheels in motion, which is usually the hardest thing. And then things can keep going from there and you can confront problems as they arise. Matt said people think that they need to have everything planned out, but Charlie said during his trip, there were things he never could have planned for, from political issues to traveling on a road that simply stopped and required him to dig out a boat and travel 500 miles down a river. While Charlie said he likes to dive right into things, for others, he said small steps can be just changing your routine or throwing some uncertainty into your day-to-day life. A tool he said that he uses is being able to deal with the unexpected and not let that throw him off. He said the more you do that, you never return to being the same, but instead you're hopefully a stronger person. Charlie said he never visited most places that people would have expected him to visit. He enjoys traveling to those places that are more off the beaten path and not necessarily tourist areas. He said you're always going to have an enriching experience if you go to another country, and you'll always learn something and always meet people who will leave a mark on you. For taking that first step over the doorstep mile, Charlie recommends that you set defined parameters for whatever you're working towards and have that starting point and tell people about it. From there, you'll have people who will hold you accountable for it, and that for the doers, you then can get a sense of commitment to yourself, because if you keep your plans secret, then they'll probably stay secret. Let's get into action items. Check out Charlie's books Through Sand and Snow and On Roads That Echo, which tell the story of his 4.5-year cycling journey, and we've links to both of those in Wednesday's show notes. For planners in the UK who are attending the CISI conference, be sure to check out both Charlie and Matt, who will be speaking at the conference. And then lastly, work out whatever your doorstep mile is, and then make sure that you're actually walking it and doing it. On Thursday, Jamie wanted to talk about the importance of starting at the bottom, because she said we're at a time where people expect they can graduate college and get their designations and expect to make $1 million within a few years. Sometimes Jamie will receive an application from someone who's interested in joining Chalansky & Associates, and they've built a good practice, but they're itching to double, triple, or 10x, and they aren't sure how to get to that next level. They'll approach them and say that they want to be a partner or an owner. Jamie said ownership isn't about who takes the glory, but instead who takes the risk. So when someone comes to her, one of the first questions she likes to ask is, what does ownership mean to you? And what does being a partner mean to you? What does that day-to-day look like? And she said if their first response is that they don't want to have a boss, she instantly dismisses them. Because the reality is, as an entrepreneur, every single one of your clients becomes your boss. Jamie said that if you're willing and wanting to go above and beyond just what you were employed for, now that's someone who feels responsibility for ownership. So ownership is about willingness to do the work. And for those that want to become a partner in the firm, she said you want to start from the ground up. She said when you do all these things, you get to ask curious questions. And the moment you feel that any of this is beneath you, or that you feel like you shouldn't have to ask, you're blowing it. Jamie said, think about how many times you stop asking questions because you're afraid of looking stupid. But the more questions that advisors ask when they're not client-facing or third-party facing or prospect-facing, you then get an opportunity to learn and grow and to discover new things. So if you're scared to ask questions, you won't live up to the level of professionalism that you're capable of. She said when you're coming into someplace new, you're judging every experience by your past. Some of that could be baggage, but you can't let that follow you around and take away your potential for growth and opportunity. Jamie said a great way to start with humility is by starting as a janitor, and you earn the opportunity to do other things. That by starting at the bottom, you then become a better leader because now you know how everything works from the inside out. Lastly, Jamie said you should ask people to do the work that you are willing to do yourself because then others see you as someone who has earned the privilege to lead. Let's get into action items. Write down, I am preparing to be, and then fill in the blank. Whatever that thing is, write that down. And instead of wishing for it, ask yourself if you're preparing to be a quitter or instead you're practicing for greatness. And think about, what is the culture like for curiosity in your organization? Are people allowed to ask questions? And do you offer a language that allows team members to ask questions and help others grow? That wraps up this week's recap. Thank you for joining me on today's Follow-Up Friday. Be sure to share this or any of our episodes with another advisor or a team member who you think might benefit from listening. And until next time, happy planning.